Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms.
Discuss and debate.
It's written work, it's game.
It's game. All right!
Let's meet the panel.
Meet the panel.
Kelsey.
Charlie.
And Josh.
Why am I so hyper?
Cookies.
Charles.
Cookies would be the answer to that question.
Oh, thank you. So be sure. Thank you.
What are we going over today?
Today's topic is over and under. We're discussing the overrated and underrated writers, in our personal opinion.
Absolutely.
The first question is, do you find the literary canon in school curriculum to be reliable to creating a list of recommended writers?
Oh, no. Not even
I
close.
think it should be more open.
I agree with both of you. I think that while there should be a minor bit of direction, I think that the teacher should have more of an ability to decide what they teach to the students. For instance, there was a debate in British literature too about whether they should or they should not teach Heart of Darkness, and I refused to pick a side because I thought that it should be up to the teacher.
Huck Finn was also very, this cookie is great. Thank you so much. And thank you for buying them. Huck Finn was also very controversial because it had the N-word in it. And some people were all for it, some people were against it, so.
But I think when you allow the professor to choose what is in the curriculum, then you have people that are going to abuse that power and only teach one writer of sorts. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but in a high school class where it's supposed to be, touching on many different things, I don't find that necessarily appropriate. And then with the question itself, I feel that I agree that it is reliable because I have enjoyed much of the work that I read in high school, but I feel like it's unreliable because many times people will hate what they read in school because it's been forced upon them. The fact that it's required reading.
Or they leave out so much, or something else on the same topic that is, in my opinion, superior gets left out in favor of some air quote classic, which is what we'll get to when I get to my view of over and under.
What I think they should do is have the teacher put a list of works together and then bring it across with her superior, and the superior goes over it.
And the supervisor reads it.
If the superior feels that if they feel that there's too much of a certain writer or it needs something, then they should suggest that.
I agree completely. When I taught at North, something we had a lot of flexibility because I taught small group English, which was a special ed placement, and in SE you have it's very student-centered. The IEP is queen, right? So you have a lot of flexibility. So what they said to me was, teach Shakespeare, any piece pick. So I did Midsummer Night's Dream because I figured these kids never have heard of any of the comedies, and they don't need another piece that's going to reinforce their defeatist worldview that's all about duplicity and treachery and people trying to one-up one another. They need something fun.
And nothing, nobody ends up dead at the end.
I think that's the
comment.
best way to go about it, is to say like these certain writers should be covered, and then you get to choose what you teach from that.
Somewhat of a general idea of who should be covered. For instance, if they shouldn't have just Catcher in the Rye and To Kill Mockingbird, which is primarily on every curriculum.
Oh gosh, yes it is.
Instead have areas that they may want to go over.
Yeah, say like, teach a 19th century woman, and then the teacher picks.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it should be set up more in that fashion than in a very narrow fashion.
Don't you also have to this would be, if I was a parent with a kid in school, I'd be open to it, but I don't want my kid coming home saying, Daddy, stop eating all my cookies. And then having my kid say, Daddy, the teacher said the N-word. Oh, honey, you'll learn someday that it's appropriate in the school setting. In other words, you don't want all those complaints going forward, but I still think that you should have an open mind.
It's a mature area. people should be mature
Yeah.
when they
It's not, you don't
go
say,
over
yeah.
these words that were used
You don't want to
in
have-
the 19th century.
You don't want to have these teachers, and, you know, I had a teacher that was very, very mature about it, and then I had one other teacher in college who just let it rip, and I'm like, okay.
I remember when I was a senior in high school, we read Bluest Eye because I took World Lit, and there's a very graphic incest scene in it. There are racial slurs used, and we were all pretty mature about it.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
The fact
How
that-
you handle it.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Next question?
Who do you feel is the most overrated writer and why?
Most overrated in the P12 curriculum, Harper Lee.
Doesn't necessarily have to be within the curriculum, it's just a general vibe. If Harper Lee is your...
I would have to get back to you on that, but one I did in school that I thought was the most overrated, To Kill a Mockingbird, was the most overrated book.
I know how you feel.
What makes that your overrated?
It's just so dry, and it's like, what does some white girls from the South know about any of this? Give me James Baldwin, give me Richard Wright, give me Rap Brown.
Mm.
That's a matter of perhaps
Opinion.
when Mrs. Vitari teaches sophomore English.
That's the plan.
We'll be teaching Giovanni's Room.
I do love that book. How did you know that's my favorite James Baldwin? Did I tell you?
I made a guess. And I've been watching a lot of other booktubers that really enjoy James Baldwin, and especially Giovanni's Room.
Go Tell It on the Mountain is my second
Go
favorite. just
tell it
incidentally.
on the mountain. Wait, like that?
No, the
Yeah.
book by James Baldwin.
Oh, I was off.
It's based off the song, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Kelsey, who would your choice be for?
For overrated, I picked J.D. Salinger because of Catcher in the Rye. With this question, I found it very difficult because I feel most authors are overrated for a particular work, not for their writing itself. I've heard that other work by J.D. Salinger is very good, but I picked J.D. Salinger because of Catcher in the Rye. I just feel like while its place in the curriculum is warranted because, you know, coming of age novels are very important, I feel like something about like a separate piece by John Knowles is a better coming of age story than
Sophomores
Catcher in the
read
Rye.
a separate piece, at
Yeah.
least at North they do.
No, they do at South as well, so. But I wasn't particularly fond of Catcher in the Rye, but I can recognize its merit.
There are probably other options of coming to age, which that would be the Don't
Price
Get-
of Salt, but they would never do that. They don't have the balls.
I mean, there's a line. You have to realize that.
What would your work be,
Parents are-
Charlie?
My, for overrated, now, don't hate me, but I would say Suzanne Collins from The Hunger Games. Now,
Yes. Cheap, watered down Battle Royale copy. Hate it, hate it, hate it.
you don't hate me?
Fist
No.
punch coming from behind the camera.
Now, I'm not saying it's bad. It's good. I read The Hunger Games, and at first I thought it was all about food, because I like food. But then I found out it wasn't about food. But that's not the reason why I didn't really like it. I mean, I liked it, but it was too,
You were underwhelmed.
yeah.
I think Divergent's definitely superior, like, at least writing-wise.
I didn't read, I
Okay,
I'm
how
not-
many multi-syllable words are there in Divergent?
I'm speaking in a YA sense, not a, you know, romantic literature or anything.
Yeah, you have to
outside of
keep
the
it within their
YA
genre.
area.
You know,
Yeah.
like.
I mean, if you like The Hunger Games, that's great. I'm not gonna go, hey, you like The Hunger Games? No, I'm open to it.
I'm sorry, I
But it's-
didn't mean
I'm
to.
the one person on the panel that really liked the first Hunger Games.
Yeah, this-
I thought I really liked the concept. I thought the rest of the series
agree. It's-
went off tangent.
I
thought
agree.
that.
Oh, I found that the second one was the best because of the arena in that one was very awesome, in my opinion.
I mean, it's
The second one went into a downward spiral though, because it became about Katniss being the chosen one per se, and then a Mockingjay was just how many people can we kill in a novel.
yeah.
Well, it's high interest fiction. You mean it has to have low readability.
We get to write to Bubba.
and-
That's what they always say. Write like Bubba's reading. You know.
And a high order plot. What it's called, high interest fiction, is you try to draw in people who aren't attracted to reading. See, as a lit teacher, I can just throw these terms around. It's
I can throw other things
high interest
around.
fiction is you take something you write very simply, but you have a plot that you think would appeal to young people, so you tend to include a lot of action. I would say the Twilight books are high interest fiction because you
I
have
was
the
gonna say that too.
romance appeal to the younger, probably girls, although there are boys that read romances.
I'm going to take your point with what I think is overrated, and that's the fact that popular fiction and what is deemed popular fiction becomes so popular and produces in a mass amount of money. The ones that usually make a lot of money are the ones that usually conform to the cookie cutout
I love cookies.
sequence as to how something should be written.
Yeah, it's structured in
There
a
always
very...
has to be a sex scene. There has to be a kissing scene. There has to be
a gun shootout, or
there has to be some kind of climax.
Yeah.
Or actually, everything has to have a climax, but it has to be within the same
yeah, it's
structure.
got to have everything.
And people seem to think these days, I'm going to write this, and I'm going to expect a movie to come out of it.
Right.
That is very much, it's cliche. But the one that I see as being my, if I had to pick a person, the one that I need to get into him a bit more, but from what I've read, my choice is Kurt Vonnegut.
Really?
Because
Really?
See, and I love Kurt Vonnegut. It shows, like,
I read,
variance in opinion.
granted, the first thing I read from him is Timequake. It may not be the best first book.
Oh, it's not the best
Because
Vonnegut.
I thought Timequake was a train wreck. Anybody that puts anybody that introduces a concept and then decides to ramble off on the color of bird feces. Come on.
Don't yell at me.
He was having a bad day when he wrote that.
Cat's Cradle is the
He
best
goes off
Vonnegut.
on, don't
Her
ever
classic Harrison
introduce
version
your
on
topic
our,
and then decide, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about
the
these
Venus,
different
the
random
one
things that
in
happened in my life.
And then
Yeah.
again becomes a
Siren's Petition is good.
I'm trying to think of one I read in school.
a subject of
That was a
you know,
Vonnegut
is
book.
the author
Or Vonnegut,
really overrated,
short
or
work,
is it just some of their work?
I just know
That
the
would be,
collection is
that's
called
probably
Writing
the
to
taste that
Monkey
I got.
House is all
I
the
started
short
reading
stories.
Slaughterhouse
Mhm.
5 though, and I thought that
Slaughterhouse
I
5
need
is
to,
awesome.
I need to get into that a little bit more, but I get this vibe that I don't see a lot of connection to
I wanted to
the
do
author and
Slaughterhouse
his
5
text.
with my resource kids, but we didn't have a class set of it.
Mm.
So that really shocked me. I was like, we're a high school and we don't carry Slaughterhouse 5.
Yeah. Just see the high schools in Newark. They don't even have books. Like,
I'm borrowing a copy off of somebody.
I'll have a footnote. Outside of curricula, most overrated book for me, 50 Shades of Grey.
That's a relief.
But that's recognizing, you have to recognize it for what it is. It's fan fiction.
yeah, it's
So-
erotic fan fiction. Whether you like it or not, or deem it to be accurate or not,
Fair. Yes.
you know, it's up to interpretation.
And I have a professor at OCC who always brings up 50 Shades of Grey, and she says that the author right now, while you're, you know, saying that you don't like her work or whatever, is laughing on her own private island somewhere because she's making millions from this book.
Yeah, because
that
that's
you
not the
deem-
point.
That's
Like,
why I see my former point as being overrated, because people, these
And I am
people-
not going to the
There are
movie
so many,
either.
there are a
Somebody's
lot of
going to get hurt
writers
doing
that
what's in that book.
their work is only okay at best, and they're wheeling in money. It all comes down to
If you can
where
make-
the opportunity, where their opportunity comes from, and whether or not they get a movie deal.
Well, I think it's by dissing, young adult literature such as, the Hunger Games and things of that sort. I feel like we're discouraging people from reading it, and, reading the Hunger Games or reading Twilight could lead somebody to read Anne Rice or, Brave New World or something that's a behind the counter.
Exactly.
Queen of the Damned is one of the best.
I have nothing against people reading Hunger Games. I liked it, but I just was like, that's
Yeah,
it.
if
That's
anything,
it.
it's like a window into a particular
Yeah,
genre. You
so
may not
that's
love
why
it, but
it's really important for YA fiction to be celebrated, because it is a window into something more than that.
Well, there's young adult fiction that's not written to be high interest. There's complex young adult fiction.
I mean, and you get to write to everyone. Like, my sister struggles with anything but black and white interpretations, and for her to ostracize her and only have high literature is going to be more off-putting than anything. Like, now she reads, and it's one of the happiest things for me because I'm a giant book nerd. So, but you can't. If I threw Troilus and Cressida at her and was like, "Have at it," she would just go back to watching reality TV.
Yeah, it's better to get her to read. Than
To go off
watch
your point,
Kardashians.
Kelsey, about better coming-of-age stories,
That's what's
I
my
would
dad.
love for
What the
schools
heck
to
is
do Perks
wrong
of
with the
Being a
Kardashians?
Wallflower.
That would
She
be a very
loves
good
the
book to do,
Kardashians.
certainly.
Oh, yeah. She farts and then she gets 10 grand.
Please,
That's
10
what I
grand?
get.
Try a mil.
Yeah.
Who do you feel is the most underrated writer and why?
Am I starting?
Yeah.
Yes, you were.
It's such an open-ended question, please.
Okay, so for underrated, I chose Sherman Alexie, who I've
Oh,
read.
he's phenomenal.
Absolutely true diary of a
Mhm.
part-time Indian.
Yeah.
Lone Ranger and Tonto fist fight in heaven is so good.
Yeah, normally when I say Sherman Alexie, people don't know who I'm talking about. I normally
Hmm.
don't get that kind of reaction. So I find that he's really underrated and writes fabulously with a kind of hilarious cynicism in a way.
Mhm.
And I also enjoy that he shines a light on a culture, the Native American culture, the modern Native American culture,
Mhm.
that many people are not aware of at all unless they live out
And he does it with humor,
west.
too.
Yeah,
Do you like his short story Distances?
I haven't read that one yet.
Oh, it's
What was-
about
What's your favorite work from?
I can't remember the name of it. It's Indian education is my favorite.
Yeah, I read that in
Mhm. And
Veronica's class.
Well, the story of Distances is it's if the plague of smallpox had killed the settlers instead of the natives,
Mhm.
and what becomes of the ghost dance and all the old tribal experience. It's a really good story.
It's a short
There's-
story?
Yes, there's that. There's when I saw my father was the only Indian who saw Hendrix play the Star Spangled Banner at Woodstock. There's the one where the Indian pawns his guitar.
yeah, I think it's not
And,
only is his work
His
important.
grandmother's dress is hanging in there, and
Mhm.
I don't remember.
Yeah, his work's not only important, but it's easily accessible because it's hilarious.
Oh,
So.
mhm. Yep, that's a good thing to garner once you get to his level. What's your pick, Charlie?
Most underrated.
Most underrated. I gotta think a little bit more. Can I get back to you on that?
Yeah, you
Still
can get back
thinking
to
on
me.
that one.
That would, I think, I could see where Lily and Charlie are coming, but the author that I chose, that I've gotten a kick into the last few months, was a Swiss writer. His name is Robert Walser, and he wrote during the modernist period. One of his more notable novels is Jacob von Gutten, which has to do with a young man who goes to servant school, where all the teachers do is sit in the lounge all day, and the only class that's taught is by the superintendent's daughter, and it's how
You know who wrote Youth in Revolt? Just
a boy must behave.
I gotcha.
And but later in his life, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he ended up in an institution. And he started writing in little manuscripts. He would write about random topics, and some of which were saved to this very day. But then he decided he would not write because he was supposed to be there to be insane. But his work is so, it's what you would call absurdist fiction. And that means that something sounds so outrageous and makes absolutely no sense, but in actuality, it makes more sense than any old thing. And one of the key examples would be Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
Oh,
That
yeah,
is-
Through the
Snake
Looking
Arrow.
Glass.
That's a key, yeah, and Through the Looking Glass as well. That would be, Walser writes in a bit more of a what am I reading kind of way, but by the end, by the time you stop finishing what you're reading, you get this sense of enlightenment, feeling that you've learned so much, and it makes you want to second guess what you're doing.
I've chosen some.
Already, who did you choose?
And I had to put a lot of thought into it. I'm actually at a crossroad between Willa Cather and she's great, and also Ernest Hemingway. They're both for me. They're like equal for me.
For underrated? I just didn't think Hemingway was underrated. In my
Yeah.
I
Well,
agree. I think he's he's become very accessible.
Mm-hmm.
To find in any bookstore.
Yeah.
Uh,
Definitely go visit his house in Key West. It's beautiful. If you have the opportunity.
What makes you? Why would you pick them as underrated? And
It's, if anything, Willa Cather, because I don't think they're teaching that as much. Now, we discussed this earlier, I think in another episode, why, about the canon.
I read my Antonia in high school.
What, you did? Oh, wow.
Interesting.
We didn't do that in high school. When I
Neither
was in
did
high
I.
school, we didn't do that. And, we stuck with Hamlet and Othello, and it's like, okay, good, Shakespeare, great. But, when I read my Antonia,
my Antonia.
Antonia, I say it wrong every time.
The
But
French.
I read that, I fell in love with the book, and I don't think she's getting enough credit for what she's worth.
My mortal enemies come to.
Okay.
Ernest Hemingway, maybe I'm off on that one. Like I said, I said it before, it's literature, we're not doing brain surgery here, so, are we, Josh? Are we doing brain surgery? No, but I would probably stick with Willa Cather,
Okay.
underrated.
Okay.
Who
I
would you
picked
choose?
my most underrated. For young adult, I'm saying C.D. Payne, who wrote A Youth in Revolt. They made a movie out of it with Michael Cera, which is the only way a lot of people have sadly heard of that book. But it's so piss your pants, laugh out loud funny.
oh no.
It is a great book as far as young adult fiction goes. For adult fiction, I'm going to say most underrated is Richard Brautigan.
I thought I heard of that name before.
He's a Vonnegut contemporary. He writes sort of short satirical vignettes that take the form of a novel. I think he wrote Trout Fishing in America is probably my
I
favorite
think I've
of
heard of
his.
that. I think I've heard of that before.
Oh, it's
You had Kayla mentioned that.
oh yeah, I gave a copy to Kayla.
I think those kind of things, if they're telling you that this is supposed to, or if it's coming off as being a work of satire, Trout Fishing in America seems like it's obviously going to be something that's not taken seriously.
Right.
Then
Dreaming of Babylon,
probably work.
Confederate General from Big Sur. I just fell in love with him. I have this huge book. It's a 3-in-1 of Brautigan's novels, and I carried that everywhere with me after I bought it in South Carolina a couple years ago.
Okay. With regard to young adult, if there's any author that really doesn't get a lot of recognition in my mind that really is a striking young adult lit author, it would be Robert Cormier, who wrote the Chocolate War.
Oh, that's
I love chocolate.
I Am the Cheese.
I love cheese.
I've heard of I Am the
Oh, yeah.
Cheese, yeah.
The Rag in the Bone Shop. Those people know the name. They're just very dark and honest. In most of his writings, the protagonist is either in a worse situation or does not win
Which is a
per
tragedy.
se.
Mm-hmm.
In the Shakespearean sense of it.
Who did My Brother Sam Is Dead? Because I really like that
I
book.
don't think it was him.
I think Robert Cormier is on the TR summer reading list though.
He
As
is
far as-
on there. He
yeah.
was probably, people recognized him more back in the 70s.
Mhm.
And,
He's
better.
making a comeback.
But hopefully, yeah, you don't see him as much it's, the Barnes & Noble may cover, they may have one or two of his works, but then again, a lot of the adult literature is the popular fiction that becomes movie.
Edmund White wrote a collection of short stories that's aimed at young adults. I really like his adult fiction. I love Boy's Own Story. That's one of my favorite books ever. It's a trilogy. It's Boy's Own Story. The name of book 2 is escaping me, and then third is Beautiful Room is Empty. And they're literary, like, they take his autobiography, but they fictionalize it.
Mhm.
And when you get to the third book, you discover he's living with HIV.
It's almost like memoir fiction, really.
Okay.
It's a really good series.
Creative, yeah.
Mhm.
If it's fictional, it's a memoir. If it would be creative nonfiction if it's a nonfiction memoir.
Hmm.
But
There was a book I really like going off creative nonfiction called The Scarlet Professor, which is about a professor named Newton Arvin who taught at Columbia. He discovered the manuscript for Billy Budd was his big claim to fame, and then it turns out he prefers the company of men, and it's all about can he maintain his post in the McCarthy years. And
wow, it seems like something that would be intriguing.
Mhm.
it's The Scarlet Professor. It's very, very good.
Does anybody have any final thoughts?
We should leave links to all these in the description.
Yeah, well, most definitely.
I'd like to recommend the book Winky by Clifford Chase. It's like a cult fiction classic. Everyone really needs to go out and read it. I love it so much.
I like Twinkies.
Trust me on this.
Mm.
Rhymes. You should give it a shot.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Okay, I have a footnote. I keep brainstorming. Another underrated, Christopher Moore.
Hmm.
He wrote You Suck, a love story, which is like
Yeah.
a young adult book that parodies vampire fiction.
That's always
And then he
fun.
wrote stuff that's for adults. He wrote a book called Lamb, which is If Judas Wrote a Gospel. It's very, very funny. He wrote Fool, which is King Lear from the Jester's View. I just love his books.
We can go all day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're
about,
just just
different writers that we find.
People
This is-
you're not reading that you should be.
This would be an episode that can go 4 hours long, but I'm going to have to
Yes.
relieve the viewers. And if you wanted to find, you could probably find something by Sherman Alexie. Definitely
Throw you in
Hemingway.
there.
Maybe Willa Cather.
Yeah.
Christopher Moore, I know you can get pretty easily.
This is Robert Walser's manuscripts. You should definitely check this out. I got it off of Amazon. It's probably going to be your best bet. It has, he writes about his first impression of the radio, which he came across in the institution in the 20s.
The boom boom box. Like
He also writes about his pencil sketches, swine. It's just,
Sounds like Joe Brainard. He was a New York school poet. He has a collection called I Remember, and it's just all his memories, and he flashes from one to another, and it's like he even remembers the first time he had chewing gum.
That sounds like it would be very catchy, though. And is that the way it's presented? Is in the way that
Yeah,
these are just random memories?
Yeah, it's an ephora. You know, you start the poem with the same line all the time, so it's I remember, and then he goes into
Okay.
detail.
I think that's something similar to writing prompt that one of my instructors presented. But be sure to join us next time for another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.
Bye.